say this, Kelly, but we haven't had Christmas yet. Never mind Happy New Year.
I did Christmas last year. Christmas is so last year, okay? This is all about New Year. So are we ready to crack on?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So I'm introducing a new feature in my talks, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I certainly enjoyed it. It's literally going to take 5 minutes.
Is it question and answers? You're going to start questions
Yeah.
at the end?
So my talk in February this year was about... Nervous laughter. No, it's not a quiz, don't worry. Lois very kindly lent me a book of minutes from Bardsley Institute, because me and my mum were having a proper nosy at them at the church open day, and we just fell in love with just what was important back in the day and was recorded forever in these books. And I was really taken with them. So what I'm going to be doing in my talks is pulling out details I find interesting for that month, and then I'm going to report back about, so for example tonight it's about in the December meetings of Bardsley Institute, what was, and it's a shame Roy's not here because I was going to ask him about one of them, and I'll let you know which one I think Roy might have had something to do with. But so yes, I wanted to share it. I'm going to do it each month. So starting on December the 2nd, 1927, it was voted that a whist drive and concert would take place on Christmas Eve. Whist features heavily, just no spoilers. And a whist drive concert and dance would be held on New Year's Eve. Cost for adults was £1 a ticket, children were 6p, and if you're under 4 you were free. And it was also moved and seconded that the piano would be tuned for the concert. I love it, it had to have emotion. Okay, 7th of December 1929, once again, it was moved and seconded that Christmas concert would be charged at £1 per adult. However, if you didn't want to play whist, what's wrong with you? You would only be charged 6p. Mr. A. Tasker, Mr. A. Hughes, Mr. F. Mason and Mr. W. Taylor were to provide entertainment, but alas, it was not recorded what form the entertainment would take. Probably featured whist. December 18th, 1931, this time it was recorded how much money would be set aside for the whist prizes on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, a whole £1. And all members of the Institute were ordered to attend the Institute at 8:30 p.m. sharp on December 22nd to decorate it. Okay? No getting out of that. Now there was some slightly juicy gossip recorded on December 30th, 1931. It was approved that the 2 members who were stopped from using the Institute on Saturday evenings and stopped from introducing visitors were to have full privileges restored in the new year. So it doesn't record who the troublemakers were or what they'd done to have their privileges revoked. However, in the very next section of the minutes, it recorded a reminder that any member who wanted to introduce a visitor had to pay 2p to Mr. Andrew. So maybe the culprits have been sneaking in visitors for free. Just seems a bit coincidental. December 10th, 1933, new billiard boards were approved to be bought for the Institute. Clearly, due to it also being approved that the Institute were to enter the Billiard League knockout competition. New balls needed to impress. December 10th, 1st, 1936, so I don't know what's happened now to the popularity of whist, but this year and subsequent years, it was not approved to have a whist drive. I'm really sorry on Christmas Eve, but they could have it on New Year's Eve. There was still to be a billiards competition, so it's not all bad. December 16th, 1938, oh dear, this year it was moved and seconded that there was no whist drive on either Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. They also debated whether to join the National Savings Committee, but decided to leave that to the National Savings Club Committee. And we then have a gap until after the war. So December the 4th, 1951, which incidentally was my grandmother's 30th birthday. And I know that means nothing to anyone besides me, and Mum was, when I told her, but that's one of the reasons I love history, like local history. So while they were debating approving whist, my gran was up in Aberdeen or Arbroath having a sherry or maybe something stronger, as was her wont, just on the same night, and I love it. But yes, whist was back, sadly not for New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, but it was going to be held in the school on January the 12th. Sadly, for Mr. A. Adamson, his request to have the old billiard cloth was reluctantly turned down. We were still into our billiards competitions, and now a darts competition was approved too. I'm telling you, they were living the life at the Institute. And I'm going to finish this. So there was a motion that was recorded in October 1929. So clearly not December, but I feel it will always be timely. It was moved and seconded that all members, were to be reminded about furniture and behaviour. Now, I don't know what happened with regards to behaviour towards furniture to incur such a warning, but I'm going to leave that with you as a reminder for tonight. No shenanigans with our furniture, please. Okay, and on that note, we are going to move into New Year. I know we've not had Christmas yet, but like I said, I did Christmas last year, so this year I wanted to do New Year. This is the first talk I've done where there is no specific mention of Oldham. Is there going to be a mass exodus?
That's why Roy's not here.
That's why Roy's not here! Oldham, I'm going. That could well be it, actually. There is no mention. I tried so hard to find something to connect Oldham. So, yeah, the only connection is that this talk is being done in Oldham. So there we go. That's my very tenuous link. But I'm hoping you'll forgive me. It'll be a one-off. From January, we're back to business as usual. February.
Not January.
We're not doing one in January.
You said you were.
Oh, no, I might be.
Alright.
Yes, sorry, Matt. We'll come back to that. So the agenda, we're going to look at the earliest recorded celebrations, when New Year was first celebrated in Britain. I found this really interesting. The first and last places to welcome the New Year, a bit of mischief going on with that as well. We're going to look at fireworks, making resolutions, Auld Lang Syne, and I've got what I think is a bit of a treat for you when I get to that. Why we have a smooch at midnight, what's New Year without a bit of fizz, and then traditions from around the world. So it's historical, you know, lots of really interesting stuff, but we will crack on by me not going in too soon with my slides, about the earliest recorded celebrations. So, I mean, civilizations have celebrated New Year, I don't know how to say forever, but for an awfully long time, thousands of years. The earliest recorded details that we know about date back to 2000 BC, the ancient Babylonians in Mesopotamia. I seem to mention them an awful lot in my talks, but they were clearly hot off the mark doing things first. So that's present day Iraq. They called their celebration of New Year Akitu, and it was celebrated at the time of the vernal equinox. I had no idea what that is, so then I quickly googled what is the vernal equinox, and that is when the sun is exactly above the equator, giving an equal length to day and night. And in the northern hemisphere, where Mesopotamia, Iraq is situated, that's around about the 20th of March, and just FYI, in the southern hemisphere, it's about the 20th of September. So the ancient Babylonians celebrated New Year towards the end of March, and it involved rituals being celebrated over a period of 11 days. Now, some of these rituals included festivals. They would be held inside temples. They sometimes erected temples specifically outside for the festivities. They would carry statues of gods through the streets. And there was one ritual which particularly caught my eye, I think might seem a bit odd to modernise. So this was a ritual involving the king, who would be taken before a statue of the god Marduk. The king would have his royal robes removed and his paraphernalia taken away from him, his symbols of authority, and he would then be slapped across the face by a high priest. And he would then be dragged around by his ears. Now, the performance was intended to make the king cry. And if he did, Marduk, clearly a bit weird, would be satisfied. He'd be very happy and would symbolically give permission for the king to carry on ruling. So I'm not too sure I'd fancy that, but if anyone fancies putting that to King Charles, see if that's for the prosperity of our nation, please feel free to. And the ancient Romans, they also celebrated New Year at the vernal equinox. However, in 45 BC, Julius Caesar tinkered around with the calendar and changed the date of the celebration to January the 1st. So this was the celebration of Janus, or Janus. He is the god of change and beginnings, and depicted with two faces. So he was seen as symbolically looking back to the old year and looking forward to the new year. Now for us, New Year's Day is a bank holiday. Some people do have to work, but for the majority of people it's a day of relaxation or sleeping off your hangovers, you know, do what you will on New Year's Day, unless you're in Scotland, of course, and you get January the 2nd off as well, and I will be coming back to that. So, in ancient Rome, far from having the day off, they actually chose to work on New Year's Day, but don't tell your bosses that. Being lazy was considered to be a bad omen for the rest of the year. So I actually will be working on New Year's Day myself, but I'm consoling myself that it means I'm setting myself up for a brilliant 2025, much more so than if I was lounging around in pyjamas and eating biscuits. Okay. So the ancient Egyptians celebrated New Year, and they celebrated it mid-July. This was in line with the annual flooding of the River Nile. Their celebration was called Wepit Rempit, which translates as opening of the year, and celebrated the Nile flooding, which was essential to ensure that the farmland remained fertile for another year, and also the death and rebirth of their god Osiris, symbolising rejuvenation of the land. So Wepit Rempit was celebrated with feasts, special religious rites, drinking and dancing, cheeky little celebration going on there, and was beginning of the calendar year. So during the first month of the new year, the Egyptians had a special celebration called the Festival of Drunkenness. Marcus perked up at that bit when I practiced. He's like, oh, do tell. So the story behind the Festival of Drunkenness, which was a real thing. So the Egyptian sun god, Ra, he was annoyed with mankind. He just thought, no, they're not behaving. I need to sort this out. And he sent his daughter, Sekhmet, down to earth to do some chastising. Now, it turned out she was a lot more bloodthirsty than Ra, her father, had anticipated, and she was very quickly in danger of actually eliminating all of humanity. Completely out of control. It was the blood that she was drawn to. So he used trickery to stop her. So he called upon the services of Tenenet, the goddess of beer, who dyed all the beer red, so Sekhmet drank all this instead and basically passed out. And humanity was saved. Humanity was saved. So interestingly, when she'd woken up, she turned into a different goddess called Hathor, who was very gentle and very kind. So the Egyptians celebrated the saving of humanity at the beginning of each year with more feasts and obviously lots of beer. And I'm sure there's a case to be made for drinking lots of beer and waking up a better person. I don't know, but I'll leave that to you. Maybe you can report back on that.
Yeah. That's why I do it, he says.
Absolutely. There we go. It's why I drink vodka. So we can find a historical source about vodka being good for you in some way and we'll be fine. So then moving on to when New Year was celebrated in Britain. So way back in the day, before Christianity brought its nice civilising influence to the British Isles, pagans celebrated New Year with a festival called Samhain. It's spelt S-A-M-H-A-I-N. A lot of people sort of think it's pronounced Samhain, but it's Samhain, just to be technical. And many of you may have heard of it, and it's nowadays more associated with Halloween. There we go, cheeky little representation. And many people do have an idea that the celebration of Samhain was to do with, spirits and the dead. And that was definitely part of the Samhain celebration, but it was also celebrating the coming of winter and the start of the new year. This was celebrated from sunset on 31st of October to sunset on the 1st of November, and the earliest written mention of Samhain is in the 9th century. So the Festival of Samhain involved lots of lovely celebrating. Big bonfires were lit. Individual households would symbolically put out their own fires and relight them from this communal bonfire. And Samhain was seen as a time when doorways to the spirit worlds opened and souls of the dead were able to enter our world. All fine and good for your ancestors or spirits you might welcome, but any potential harmful spirits were warded off by people wearing costumes, and they wore masks to scare away these harmful spirits. Lots of feasting, lots of drinking. Would we be British if there wasn't drinking at a festival? Livestock would be slaughtered, some ritually sacrificed, and nowadays, some people like to sort of surmise or say that humans were ritually sacrificed in Britain, but there really isn't any evidence that this was the case. It usually a rooster or maybe a cow, but certainly an actual animal rather than a human. So New Year was celebrated at the end of October, beginning of November. But of course now we celebrate it 31st of December, that's New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, 1st of January. But the date didn't change quickly from November or end of October to the end of December. For many years, New Year was celebrated in Britain on March the 25th under the Julian calendar. Now that changed in September 1752 to the Gregorian calendar, and from that date the start of the year was fixed at the 1st of January. So as a side note, I found this fascinating. The Gregorian calendar started on the 1st of September 1752, but the previous Julian calendar had been a few days out of sync. So to make up for that, they cut out 11 days, and when they woke up, started on the 2nd of September, when they woke up the next day, it was the 14th of September. Now, as someone whose birthday is the 13th of September, I would have had words, quite frankly. But this also explains, I love this, okay, I absolutely love this. This is just how vehement we can be in this country, okay? So, this explains, so we have the weird anomaly that our financial year starts on the 6th of April, okay? And as I said, when the Julian calendar was introduced, the 3rd to 13th of September were missed out to get the world or, time back on an even keel. Previously, the new year started March 25th. Now it's starting on the 1st of January. So people didn't want to start paying their taxes on the 1st of January because they said, well, we're paying them 3 months too early. Absolutely not. Fine, stick to March 25th. Taxpayers, you can still pay them on March 25th, start of the new year as was. But then the taxpayers had to think about this and said, well, no, because you just cut 11 days out. So we're still paying 11 days too early. We were not prepared to pay 1 penny in tax a day earlier than we had to. So the powers that be said, fine. All right, how does April the 6th sound? We're sure it'll just be a fad. We'll tinker with that over the years. It'll never catch on. 2024, we still have April the 6th. And it's all because of the change of the calendars and missing out those 11 days. So if you've ever wondered why the financial year runs differently, now you know. Okay, so looking at the first and last places to celebrate New Year. So we've looked at how it was celebrated historically, and I thought it'd be interesting to have a quick look at where are the first and last places on Earth to actually welcome in the New Year. So the very first place on Earth to see each New Year is the Line Islands, part of the Republic of Kiribati in the Pacific Ocean. So there's the Republic of Kiribati, there's the Line Islands. So this is the very first place. So it has the most advanced time zone in the world, but the islands are actually uninhabited. So there's no annual celebrations at New Year. But it wasn't always the case. Kiribati actually changed its time zone in December 1994 because previously there'd been a timeline that had cut across the country. So this republic, this country, half of the country was one day and the other half was always a day different because of where that timeline was. So the president in December 1994 said, enough, don't want this anymore, we're all going to have the same date. So he moved, he changed the time zone to make the country aligned. So that's good for the Republic of Kiribati, but really annoyed Tonga and the Chatham Islands, which are part of New Zealand, because this now meant that the Line Islands would see the millennium before they did. Apparently there were diplomats were required to intercede. They were very cross about this. So as I said, the Line Islands are uninhabited, so New Year's not celebrated. But when they realised they were going to be, oh, millennium, we're going to be the first, are we? Maybe we should celebrate it then. So they shipped a load of officials out to it, and one of the islands, which was previously called Caroline Island, officially had its name changed to Millennium Island. And I like to think it was a little nod to Tonga and the Chatham Islands just to go, we see you, yeah? And they had special Millennium celebrations, and why not? So where on Earth is the last place to see the New Year? So there's 2 islands, Baker Island and Howland Island, US territories in the Pacific. And as we can see here, just next door, because there's the timeline. So we've got them just next door, and they're uninhabited. So it's just really weird. I mean, I meant to look and see how close they were, but that's the first place on Earth, and that's the last place on Earth. So maybe that's a pub question, you never know. So now we're going to start looking at some of the traditions associated with the New Year, and we're going to start with fireworks. So you can't celebrate New Year without a bang. It means fireworks. Hello, Sydney Harbour Bridge. And come on, quick question, why has Sydney Harbour Bridge got a slight relation to Oldham from one of my previous talks?
The nuts.
The rivet.
Yeah.
There we go. You've passed, you're welcome back to the next talk. Yes, rivets from Park Bridge Steelworks. So, when did we first start using fireworks, and why do we use them at New Year? So it's a little debated as to when fireworks were first invented. So it could be they were invented as early as 200 BC in China. Some historians believe they were invented between 600 and 900 AD in China, and others that it didn't appear until between 900 and 1279 in China. So whatever the actual facts, A, they've been around a long time, and B, they were invented in China, we know that much. They were definitely first used in festivals and celebrations during the Chinese Song dynasty, which ruled between the 10th and 13th centuries. And they started making their way over to Europe over the next few hundred years, and we know they were in England by 1486 because they were recorded as being part of the celebrations when Henry VII, Henry Tudor, married Elizabeth of York. It was recorded that fireworks were used in the celebrations. And the Tudors were big fans of fireworks. There are many records of firework displays during the reigns of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. And Elizabeth was so keen on them, she appointed an official Fire Master of England, who was responsible for managing and arranging the royal displays. And I think that's an amazing title. I'm the Fire Master of England, mate. What are you? Yeah, I'm a civil servant. Civil servants are great, but come on, Fire Master of England. William Shakespeare wrote about fireworks in two of his plays. In Henry VIII, a character says, with all the honourable points of ignorance pertaining thereunto, as fights and fireworks. No, I don't know what that means. And in Love's Labour's Lost, it said, the king would have me present the princess Sweetchuck with some delightful ostentation, or show, or pageant, or antique, or firework. So they were clearly common enough at this time that he could mention them in his plays, and people would know what he was talking about. So it wasn't just England that fireworks really caught on. In 18th century France, they were very much enjoying using fireworks displays at their celebrations. And it was in France in the 18th century that was a really deadly, because I know you guys like the gruesome details, and there was a very deadly fireworks display. So March 30th, 1770, Marie Antoinette, most of us will have heard of her, married the Dauphin of France, the future Louis XVI. And for those of you who know your French history, you know what happened to those two. But there was a fireworks display at their wedding. So this is a depiction from the time of the fireworks. And there appears to have been a panic, though, at some point. Now, there's not a huge amount of information available about it, and I found it a bit confusing, but it appears that some of the spectators, or a lot of the spectators, were in quite a narrow, enclosed passageway, and some people started to be worried that the lit fireworks were going to fall from the sky and land on them. So they started to kind of panic and run, and it caused a stampede. And because it was in a narrow enclosure, many people were trampled to death. Now, the official figures put the number of dead at 133, but many accounts at the time put the death toll at 1,200 people. Yeah, killed in a stampede at a firework display. So why did fireworks become popular? Well, in ancient China, where we've definitely established they were invented, it was believed that evil spirits, this is a common theme, many cultures, many civilizations felt that there was this doorway, this opening where spirits could enter our world at New Year. And they believed that fire and noise and bright lights would scare them, so hence fireworks becoming a staple at New Year. And I think we're less worried about ghosts now, it's all about that bang. So making resolutions. I enjoyed this bit. We're all probably guilty of making them, aren't we? We make them, absolutely. We're going to stick to them for the whole year, but we break them within 30 seconds. Here is my list of New Year's resolutions for next year. I think that's definitely achievable. Yeah, I'm quite confident about that. So we know that during Akitu, the Babylonian celebration, ancient Babylonians made promises to the gods about how well they would behave in the coming year, and early Christians would use the new year, as a time to reflect on past mistakes and again promise to behave better in the new year. And it appears that making resolutions at New Year became a popular, more secular practice from the beginning of the 19th century. However, January the 2nd, 1671, Anne Halkett, a Scottish writer, headed her diary entry for that day, resolutions, and included a resolution that I will not offend anymore. I was like, come on, a few more details about that would have been amazing, but that's all she gave us, which indicates that clearly making a resolution was a known practice then. And on January the 1st, 1813, an article appeared in a Boston newspaper which said, "And yet I believe there are multitudes of people accustomed to receive injunctions of New Year's resolutions who will sin all the month of December with a serious determination to begin the new year with new resolutions and new behaviour, with the full belief that they shall thus expiate and wipe away all their former faults." So clearly, people are anticipating wiping the slate clean in January and hoping to get away with naughty behaviour in December, which I quite understand. So if you've seen any naughtiness going on around the village, that'll just be me saying, it'll be fine, come January the 1st, or be forgiven. And then when I was researching the most common New Year's resolutions, I had a reminder about being careful what you look for. When researching most common resolutions, I got page after page telling me the most common resolution is a 1920 by 1080 pixels, commonly known as Full HD, standard apparently for most HD TV computer monitors. So if that's what you came here for, you're welcome. But when I searched for the most common New Year's resolutions, I discovered, well, I wasn't surprised. What do you think the 3 most common New Year's resolutions are?
Stopping drinking.
Lose weight.
Oh, so lose weight. I'm sure that's probably in the top 10, stopping drinking. So lose weight.
Stop smoking.
That'll be in there, but it's not one of the top 3.
Yeah, diet, yeah.
Stop swearing.
Yeah, I'll try that. We tried that. Failed. So it is definitely to lose weight, improve finances, and exercise more. They're the 3 most common. And as to how many of these are kept, so 23% of people quit their resolution by the end of the first week, 43% quit by the end of January, 80% quit by the 2nd week of February, and in fact only 8% of New Year's resolutions are kept for the whole of the year, and I'm definitely within the 23% who say, nah, in the first week of January. I tried, no more. Okay, so moving on to Auld Lang Syne. So we all know that song, don't we? And although if you're like me, you just know the one verse in the chorus that you just repeat and repeat and repeat, okay? And it's based on a poem written by one of Scotland's most, Mark was like, don't do the Scottish accent. From Scotland, Robbie Burns.
For someone that's Scottish, that's a
I
terrible
know, I am
accent.
actually Scottish.
She's Scottish, full Scottish.
Go on, give us a proper Robbie Burns.
Robbie Burns.
I can't even say it.
But we'll give it a good try. Yeah, but honestly, he was like, just please don't do it. I was like, I'm doing it. So, Scotland's national poet. Yeah, I can hear it myself now. I think I'll stop.
Yeah.
Scotland's national poet, still held in such high regard that his birthday is celebrated on January the 25th each year, even though he died in 1796. And he wrote the poem in 1788 and freely admitted it was based on an earlier poem, the author of that one being one Alan Moran's in 1724, and that in turn being based on an older Scottish folk song. So the poem Burns wrote was set to music in 1799 and is the same that we sing now. So Auld Lang Syne, it's written in Scots, and a literal translation of the title is Old Long Since, which more or less means days gone by. When we sing about For Auld Lang Syne, we are singing about for the sake of old times, as the song is about friendship, remembering good times that have been had. And it very quickly became a tradition in Scotland to sing Auld Lang Syne on New Year's Eve. Scottish New Year, called Hogmanay. No, I was going to attempt in a bar, I was like, I can feel Marcus just going. Hogmanay. For a very long time, arguably even still now, a bigger celebration than Christmas. So between 1640 and 1660, Christmas was banned legally in Scotland. The Scottish Church, the Kirk, quite famously, very Protestant, very puritanical was the Scottish Kirk. And mid-17th century, they kind of felt that Christmas was a bit too much fun. There's too much fun happening here. Get on your knees and pray, people. Okay? Take off the silly hats and stop drinking. So England and Wales looked at that and thought, that looks like a good idea. So they followed suit in 1644 by banning Christmas. Honest to goodness. It wasn't until Charles II took the throne in 1660 that Christmas was restored. I mean, he was known as the Merry Monarch. So clearly he wasn't going to be messing about. Give me back my Christmas. So because they weren't able to do any proper Christmas celebrating in Scotland, Hogmanay became like the biggest celebration of the year. And I mean, it remains a huge celebration today. And at the celebration of Hogmanay, participants would stand in a circle and hold hands and sing Auld Lang Syne. You may be more familiar, we all tend to do this, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, no idea why. That was started by the Freemasons in the 19th century, and obviously they don't tell anybody anything, so we don't know why they decided that was a better way of doing it, but they did. And the tradition spread from Scotland to Great Britain. As the British moved around the world, nice country, we'll have that, but you can have this song to sing on New Year. Fair trade. And it has been translated into many languages, and it is sung all over the world at New Year and on special occasions. Now, there was a recording made of Auld Lang Syne in 1898, sung by Charles Samuel Myers and Alfred Colt Haddon, and you can listen to it online at the British Library Sound Recordings. But I love it, and it's not long, so I'm going to play it for you. But this is from 1898, and I just think it's brilliant. Oh. Whoa. Not available while you're offline.
Oh, you've got no Wi-Fi.
Mark and Gupper and sing. Oh no! I didn't think about it because I played YouTube in here before.
What's it called?
Oh no! I'm just gonna try again. If in doubt, try again. No. Oh, you find.
Can you get
I'm looking for it now.
I've got it, yeah, I've got it online.
Cal, who's it by?
Well, if you just search 1898, Google 1898 Auld Lang Syne recording. Look at this. Technology at its greatest.
Yeah.
And I always say, I don't just throw this together, you know. You're all sat there going, really, Kelly? Really?
J.W. Myers, was it?
Oh, that sounds, it was Charles Samuel Myers and
no.
Alfred Colt, but I'll take whatever.
1898.
1898.
Right.
I think, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
But no, I love it.
That's been up for 2 years.
1898,
Yeah.
that is real people who clearly are long dead. But their voices live on, and there's just something about that song. I mean, I've listened to it a million times while really well putting this talk together. And I get goosebumpy, you know, every time. It is really lovely. So if we were able to stay awake till midnight on New Year's Eve, which we just don't, we would be playing that. Oh, shoot. Right, let me get this. Going to string these together, I really don't. There we go. Fabulous. Right, so moving on to why we do a bit of smooching at New Year's Eve. So before I researched kissing on New Year's Eve, I did not realise how important it was. Okay, so guys, pay attention. Failing to have a kiss on New Year's Eve, you could be setting yourself up for all manner of issues in the new year, okay? So it's a custom in many parts of the world, but seems to have been a particular tradition in England and Germany, an important part of their ancient folklore. And as with many other New Year's customs, okay, so I think this is rather spurious, but you know, so we've had fireworks to scare off evil spirits, we've had costumes, we've had masks, but apparently having a kiss, yeah, that keeps the evil spirits away too. Yeah, so we have to do it for the good of the country. If you were single and didn't get a kiss on New Year's Eve, you were probably going to be single for the rest of the year. And woe betide you if you were in a couple and you didn't kiss your partner, or you're inviting in even bigger problems between you. And I always say I don't make the rules, I just make sure everyone follows them, okay? So as long as you're aware. So you may not remember, if you were here at my Christmas talk last year, there were lots of warnings when it came to kissing under the mistletoe, and there were some rules when it came to Christmas kisses. So if you're under the mistletoe at Christmas, only men can kiss ladies, and never the other way around, and you may only kiss on the cheek. Okay, that's a very important rule. That's only for Christmas though. No such rules when it comes to New Year, so anything goes. Whoever wants can make the first move, and I guess you can snog wherever you want, but I mean, again, I'm leaving all that to you. So, but with due respect to warnings about couples not having a kiss at midnight, if we're sticking to the letter of the tradition, ideally you should be kissing the first person you see at midnight. I'm hoping this year it's Tom Hardy, but I'll take Marcus. Because whoever that person is determines whether you have good luck or bad luck. So if it's your partner, excellent. If it's someone else's partner, good luck. You're going to need it. So yeah, as I said, the roots of New Year's kisses go back a long time in English and German folklore, and it appears that it was the Germans who took this tradition around the world in the 19th century. The tradition of that New Year's kiss is first mentioned in print in an article in the New York Times on January the 3rd, 1863, and they wrote, "As the clocks ring out the hour of midnight, all this festivity pauses for a moment to listen, and as the last stroke dies into silence, all, big and little, old and young, male and female, push into each other's arms and hearty kisses go round like rolls of labial musketry." Well, there's a very specific simile going on there. Whatever labial musketry is, with the exclamation, "Happy New Year." Now, German immigrants in 19th century New York were seen as very respectable, unlike Irish and Italian immigrants. I wasn't there, don't shoot me, this is just what I've read. So it was acceptable to copy their traditions, and thus having a smooch at New Year's Eve became a tradition that continues today. And then what's New Year without a bit of fizz? Huzzah! And I'm sure many of us have toasted in the New Year with a glass of something sparkly. It's a well-established tradition. But as you'll find out, the English played a very large part in the creation of champagne as we know it today. Not that the French would ever admit to that, okay? But the production of wine in the Champagne area of France, it's about 90 miles east of Paris, and we know it dates back to at least the 5th century AD, but possibly even earlier. And in the Champagne region, winter temperatures fall very low, and this halts the fermentation process. There's dormant yeast cells. They then start fermenting again when the temperatures warm up in the spring. And to the horror of the early makers of this wine, this added bubbles and made the wine fizzy. And they were like, no, Alois, zut, non. And that's my GCSE French exhausted. But they worked out a solution to get rid of those pesky bubbles. And many people may not know, but until the 17th century, champagne was still. It was not sparkling. But in the mid-17th century, exports of champagne to England often had bubbles in it when it was opened due to the temperature difference, and the English loved it. They loved it, like, oh my God, this is #amazeballs, okay? And it was seen as highly desirable. So, English scientists set to work to find out how do we make our own wine fizzy, and they realised almost any wine can be made to sparkle. I mean, I'm being very, very basic here. I'm sure there's more to it, but you add sugar to it basically before you bottle it. There's probably something more sciencey, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. So British merchants then started producing fizzy champagne before the French purposefully did it. And if that's not a pub quiz question, I don't know what else might be, okay? The English produced fizzy champagne. Okay. So next French person, so you tell them that. But don't tell them where I live. So sparkling champagne became very popular because the French were then like, oh right, if everyone else likes it, we'll have this, thank you very much. And it became very popular in France in the 18th century. Became the most popular drink for toasting, special occasions, weddings and whatnot. And of course, New Year. And it was drunk as a sign of prosperity. Only the terribly wealthy could afford to buy it. So it's an excellent way of showing just how rich you were. Look at me drinking. I'm going to pour it away now, actually. That's how rich I am. And it came a little cheaper in the 19th century. And so the common folk started to be able to drink it as well. It's one of those aspirational things. It was associated with the rich. And so now it's slightly more affordable. Other people would buy it, but couldn't afford to drink it on a regular basis, so it was still saved for special occasions. I suppose a bit like now. I mean, I certainly don't buy a bottle of champagne for a Saturday night. It is saved for those special occasions, and it became a staple for New Year. And so I mentioned that the English started making the champagne fizzy on purpose before the French did. And the French obviously put a stop to that. In 1891, they got legal exclusivity to call their wine champagne, their sparkling wine champagne. Every other type of fizzy wine has legally to be called sparkling wine, can't call it champagne. And one last thing about champagne on New Year's Eve, the toast you make with it, according to the rules, it has to be made at exactly midnight, not a minute before, not a minute after, because this is when old habits die and new ones begin. So just remember that on New Year's Eve. Delay the New Year's kiss, hang fire, so as not to be late with that champagne toast. And then I thought I'd finish by sharing some traditions from other countries around the world. I love this bit. So red, long seen as a colour that brings good luck. I think quite famously in China, the colour red has been associated with wealth, prosperity, all-round good luck. In many cultures, the colour red is also associated with fertility. And this continues to be the case in Italy, where it is tradition to wear red pants on New Year's Eve. I was like, Marcus, will you put some red pants on and pose? I'm not going to repeat his reply. So apparently this ensures that you will find love and passion in the coming year, and the tradition of wearing red in Italy dates right back to the ancient Romans, who embraced the wearing of red undercrackers as a surefire means of good luck in the new year. And it's not just red that symbolises good things. So the colour white is associated with purity, peace, spiritual cleansing. And in Brazil, it's tradition to wear white at New Year to usher in all the good things associated with the colour. And the tradition in Brazil dates back many years. They would wear white on December 31st to honour Yemanja, a Brazilian goddess of water and creation. But it's not just white that Brazilians can choose from to wear at New Year. They too have a tradition based on the colour of the pants that you wear. More choice then. So you can wear white to bring peace in the coming year, blue for harmony, yellow for wealth, red for passion, or pink for love. So if yellow's for wealth, that's the colour I'll be wearing. That may be a little bit too much information, but now you know. And in Denmark, it's deemed to be good luck to visit your neighbours on New Year's Eve. Well, why wouldn't it be? What a lovely thing to do. But not necessarily to socialise with them, but to throw plates at their front door. This is true. This is true. You don't have to go buy a brand new tableware if you chip any or you're going to get rid of any through the year. You save them. Because the more plates, so when you step outside the next day, the more plates that you have smashed outside your front door, the more popular you are. You can get that on Instagram. But the more prosperity you will have in the new year. And the throwing of the plates gets rid of any anger and aggression and means that the new year will start and continue peacefully. I've not found out when this tradition started, but I can also tell you, if you were to be in a Danish home in the run-up to midnight, you would see your hosts standing on chairs. Maybe there were Danish people at the Barnsley Institute. That's literally just occurred to me. Behaviour and furniture. Yeah, I'm going to look into that. You're going to be standing on chairs. So when the clock strikes midnight, they jump off. They are literally jumping into the new year. And it's thought to be very bad luck if you don't do this. But the chances of me jumping off a chair any time without injury are quite slim, but at midnight after a few sherbets, I'm just glad I'm not Danish. No, I'll stick to being Scottish. And my last tradition is a British one that nowadays I think it's claimed more by the Scottish, but historically it's tradition that was carried out all over the British Isles. We've all heard of first footing? Mm-hmm. Yeah? So this is about the first person to enter your home after midnight on New Year's Eve. But again, rules. You have to be careful that you have the right person to ensure good luck. So no matter where I looked, all sources agreed, the ideal first footer is a tall, dark-haired man. Ideally bringing you gifts of food, money, and an alcoholic... No? Food, money, and an alcoholic beverage. Okay, and this is definite tradition I can get on board with. I like that, okay. They should also bring you coal to symbolise warmth and ensure that your house never gets cold. But I am happy, in case you've got any ideas, with food, money and booze, okay. So first footing dates back to pre-Roman times and is very much associated with the old British winter solstice celebrations. And so it's clearly a very old celebration of New Year. But I'll just leave you with a warning. Again, I don't make the rules, I just let you know about them. If your first footer is a red-headed man, don't hold your breath for good luck. I'm really sorry. Women, they're not seen as lucky first footers either. But I think that's because women aren't stupid. Send the men out into the cold to do the rounds. We will stay at home and accept the food, the money, and the booze, and throw the coal on the fire. Who's winning? So I think there's a woman who said, no, it's really bad luck for women. We stay put. Men, you go out and do the first footing. Maybe I made that bit up, but I like to think that was true. So all that remains is for me to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Thank you so much.